Hey guys, thank you so much for coming to my channel. If you have been here before, thank you for coming back. And if this is your first time, thank you for stopping by. My name is Nicole and I am a Scrum Master. On today's topic, we are going to talk about one of the key metrics in Scrum, the velocity. There are different metrics in Scrum. You have your burn up charts, you have your burn down charts, and then you have your velocity. Again, there are other metrics in Scrum, depending on the team, depending on what they're tracking. But again, the velocity is just a matrix that helps you to know how much work your development team members should commit to for the next sprint. So it's a matrix that just helps you to determine how much work your team should commit to for the next sprint. So let's say you guys are about to start your sprint. Again, a sprint is just a timeline that your team wants to deliver a certain amount of work, right? And that timeline can be your sprint can go for 1 week, it could go for 2 weeks, it could go for 3 weeks, it can go for 4 weeks. It just depending on the agreement on the team, how long they're going to be running their sprints. Where I've worked at, most places I've worked at, we've been doing a 2 week sprint. And again, when your team meets during the sprint planning meeting, right? How do you, the scrum master, how do you know how much story points or how much work your development team members should commit to for the next sprint? How do you know how much work the team should accept during the sprint planning meeting for the next sprint? One way for you to know how much work your development team members should commit to is by pretty much calculating the velocity of that team, right? Again, if this is a brand new team, you guys might not really have a velocity at this point because they have not really started doing any actual work. They might not have an actual velocity to start looking at this point. They don't have any metrics at this point. So you really start calculating your velocity after a couple of sprints, after the team has built up some type of matrix that you can look back at and then now get an idea of how much work they have been accepting, how much they have been delivering. Again, so the velocity just kind of helps you to know, it guide you to know how much work your development team members should commit to for the next sprint. So before I actually go into my sprint planning meeting, right, the first thing that I actually want to do is I want to make sure that I calculate the velocity of my team, right? So the way I do it is I simply just go to Jira. I just go to Jira and then check the velocity for the team. So if you see on my screen right now, right, the green line just pretty much represent the number of story points that the team committed to do for that particular sprint, and the green line just represent the number of story points that they were able to complete in that particular sprint. So if you can see right here, this particular team has had about 5 different sprints. So right here on sprint one, it says they committed to 13 story points. They were able to deliver 13, which is good, right? It just means that they committed to 13 and they deliver all the work that they accepted during the sprint planning meeting. And then again, you can see spring two, spring three, spring four, and spring five, what they committed to. And here are the ones that the story points that they were able to achieve. These are the story points that they were able to deliver in those different sprints. How do you, the Scrum Master, know how many story points your development team members should commit to for Spring 6, which is the next spring that's starting, right? So for Spring 6, for you to know how much story points your team should commit to is by simply adding the past 3 sprints number of story points that your team were able to deliver for the past 3 sprints. You total these numbers that they were able to complete, get an average. That average just simply means that this is the amount of story points that your development team members should be accepting during their sprint planning meeting. Again, the way you calculate velocity is you just get an average from the last 3 sprints, the past 3 sprints. So if I were to calculate my velocity to know how much work the development team should commit to in Spring 6, I'll simply just add this 17, I'll add the 26, and I'll add the 23, total this number and get an average. This just means that my Spring 6, the average that I got, that's the amount of story points that the team should be committing to do in the next spring. So you guys, when you're in your spring planning meeting, right, it's really good to know the velocity before you even go to the spring planning meeting, because when you're in that meeting, as your team members are accepting the work, as your product owner is pulling the stories in the sprint, those points are adding, right? Those story points are adding. Once the story point gets to the number of the velocity that you just calculated, this is the time for you, the Scrum Master, to encourage the team, educate them, coach them, and let them know that we have reached our velocity for the sprint. This is the right place for us to stop, right? You want to do this because you don't want your development team members to overcommit. If they go over the average, they're overcommitting, right? Unless they say they are going to be able to achieve everything that they are committing to. But try to base it off of your velocity because statistically, Endura is showing that this is how much work they can accept in this particular sprint that's about to start. So just always make sure that during the planning meeting, you get the velocity calculation. You kind of coach your team once they get to that average number that you just got. Just coach them and let them know that, guys, we have reached our max, our velocity for the sprint. I think we can stop right here. However, let them know if we do get finished with this work ahead of time, if the team complete all of the work ahead of time, they can always pull in more work from the product backlog into the sprint, right? The product owner can always guide the team on the priority on what they should focus on next. If they do get to finish up very quick with everything that they accepted in the sprint planning meeting. So they can always accept more work once they are done with what they committed to. But try to make sure that they're not accepting over the velocity during the sprint planning because high chances are they might not get it done and you guys might end up have to roll over stories now into your next sprint. So that's actually one of the benefits of having your velocity, calculating your velocity, just kind of guide you in this particular sprint that's about to start. So just always make sure that during the planning meeting, you get the velocity calculation. You kind of coach your team once they get to that average number that you just got. Just coach them and let them know that, guys, we have reached our max, our velocity for the sprint. I think we can stop right here. However, let them know if we do get finish with this work ahead of time, if the team complete all of the work ahead of time, they can always pull in more work from the product backlog into the sprint, right? The product owner can always guide the team on the priority on what they should focus on next. If they do get to finish up very quick with everything that they accepted in the sprint planning meeting. So they can always accept more work once they are done with what they committed to. But try to make sure that they're not accepting over the velocity during the sprint planning because high chances are they might not get it done and you guys might end up have to roll over stories now into your next sprint. So that's actually one of the benefits of having your velocity, calculating your velocity, just kind of guide you to know how much work your team should commit to in the next sprint. Another benefit of using or having your velocity is it kind of helps you to forecast, right? It helps you or the product owner to kind of see ahead and forecast on how much can we deliver as a team, right? Let's say if your team members or in your product backlog, let's say your product backlog has a certain number of user stories that are part of your MVPs, right? That are supposed to be delivered in a certain date. Let's say you have a product backlog items that are supposed to be, your team needs to deliver by a certain date. How do you know that your team will be able to deliver this work on time? So your velocity now will really help you to know if your team members will be able to deliver all the work that are part of your MVPs that are in your product backlog by the time of that release. So once you get the average of your velocity, you can pretty much calculate how many sprints it's going to take you guys by the time you go to your release, and also how many story points. Obviously, once you know the average velocity, you're going to be able to determine if your team members is going to be able to achieve all the story points that are currently in your backlog by the time of that release. So that's another benefit of just knowing your velocity. It kind of helps your team and the product owner to kind of forecast, to kind of look ahead to see, is this feasible? All the work that we have in our backlog for this release, are we going to be able to deliver them on time? So knowing that velocity is kind of going to put your team in a better position, right? In terms of knowing, are we at risk? Are we going to be able to deliver the work on time, or are we not going to be able to deliver the work on time? At this point, if you guys need more resources based on the velocity on your team, if you guys see that maybe we need more QAs for testing, maybe we need to hire more developers, this can also help you guys to make that decision if you guys want to hire more people based on the velocity on the team, based on how much work they have been delivering sprint by sprint. So guys, that's pretty much it about velocity. Again, velocity just help you, the scrum master, to guide your team to be able to know how much work they should accept, how much work they should commit to during sprint planning meeting. So make sure that before you're going to your sprint planning meeting, always go on Jira, just view reports, click on report, and then now just click on the velocity chart just to see this chart and then get an average of the number of story points that they were able to achieve in the past previous 3 sprints. Total the number, get an average during your planning meeting. Once they hit the average, as they're pulling in the work, just encourage them, educate them that, guys, this is a good place for us to stop. If we do need more work, we can always pull in more work as we are progressing with the sprint. So that's pretty much it, guys. Again, if you have any other topic that you would like me to talk about, please do leave me a message. You can always email me at nicole.agilepractitioner@gmail.com. Thank you guys so much and see you guys soon.